Hi, kindergarten friends. Let's talk math. We're still in chapter 8, but we are on chapter 8, new lesson, describe length, height, and weight. So we have already had some lessons where we have been measuring the length and comparing the length of things, and where we have been measuring and comparing the height, and where we have been measuring and comparing the weight. So if you look at this question, the question says, how do I describe objects by length, height, and weight? So here, oops, not that one, this one. We have something where I want to do a little practice with some of the ways that we compare objects. So what words could you use to compare two objects? So one thing I was thinking of was one word we could use to compare two objects is this word. This says longer. So one thing could be longer and the other would be shorter. So longer and shorter, that's a way that I could compare two objects. What if I'm comparing the weight of things? One word I would use to compare the weight is heavier. So if one thing is heavier, then the other is lighter. So these are words that I could use to compare two objects. Longer, shorter, heavier, lighter. Those are some words that we could use to compare objects. Okay, I'm going to delete those words now. I'm going to clear them. Okay, now circle the words that can be used to describe a can of paint compared to a glass of water. So is this can of paint taller or shorter than the glass of water? Right, it's taller, so we can circle the word taller. Is this can of paint heavier or lighter than the glass of water? If you picked it up, would it be heavier or lighter? Well, I've picked up a big can of paint before, and I can tell you it's really heavy. So my guess is it would be heavier than a glass of water. Okay, now, what's the next thing that we're going to do with this? I'm going to write some words into the blanks so you can tell me what words to write. Write words in the blanks that compare the bison, okay, this is the bison, he's really big, to the dog in height, length, and weight. So the first thing we're going to do in height, how would you describe the bison compared to the dog in height? Did you say taller? Because I would say that the bison is taller than the dog. Okay, what about the length of the bison and the length of the dog? How would you describe the bison compared to the dog in length? Would you say it's longer? I would say it's longer than the dog. And then what about weight? Have you ever seen a bison before? Well, I can tell you that compared to a person, that's probably about how big a bison is compared to a person. So how would you compare a bison to a dog in weight? Do you think it's lighter or heavier than a dog? Yeah, I definitely think a bison is heavier than a dog, for sure. Okay, so now we're going to go on to what you have in front of you. Okay, so your packet, on the front of your packet, there's some things we're going to do here. So let's read the directions. You are going to choose some objects in your house. So you're going to choose two real world objects. And then you're going to draw them and describe the length of each object. describe the weight of each object. So what you're going to do is you're going to circle the object that is longer and draw an X on the object that weighs more. So you're going to need to choose two real world objects. So I'm looking around my kitchen right now. Looking around my kitchen. Okay, so I have two real world objects. One of them is a stool that we sit on when we're sitting at our table island. Okay, so a stool. That's one object that's in my kitchen right now that I'm looking at. Okay, another object that's in my kitchen right now that I'm looking at is a coffee cup. Okay. So I drew two objects. I drew the stool that we sit at the kitchen island, and I drew a coffee cup. Now it says the next thing to do with it, circle the object that is longer. Ooh, interesting. Okay, so the object that is longer. Wow, well, if I put these next to each other, I would say that the taller object here is also the longer object. So the one that is longer is the stool. If I put that coffee cup on top of the stool, it would probably be over in this corner here, okay? So that one is longer. Okay, now what about the weight? If I picked up my stool and I picked up the coffee cup, which one do you think would be the object that weighs more? Do you think the coffee cup would weigh more, or do you think the stool would weigh more? I'm pretty sure the stool weighs more. So it says draw an X on the object that weighs more. So my circle and my X are on the same object. That could happen for you too. It might. Okay, now let's go on to the next page. So you will go on to the page that's See and Show. And the See and Show page is going to have some different objects. And you are going to read the directions here. You're going to look at those objects. So for number 1, there's a mechanical pencil and a box of chalk. Now, I want you to describe the length of each object. Which object is longer than the other? I would say the mechanical pencil is longer. It goes all the way out to here, chalk. Okay, and then describe the weight of each object. Draw an X on the object that weighs more. Okay, so there's a mechanical pencil. They don't weigh much at all. They're very, very light. And then there's a box of big pieces of chalk. So I would say the big pieces of chalk are the heavier object. So I'm going to put an X on the heavier object. Okay, so for number 2, our example is going for number 2 again. We have some plastic scissors and we have a little teeny tiny pencil sharpener. Okay, so you're going to circle the object that is longer. Well, it looks like the scissors are definitely longer than the pencil sharpener. And then put an X on the object that is heavier. Now, this little pencil sharpener is very, very light and very, very small. So I would say that these scissors are going to weigh more and be heavier than the pencil sharpener. Okay, so that's what you do on the See and Show page. And when you go on to the On My Own page. So both of those pages. So let's look and read the directions just to be sure for On My Own. Look at the objects for number 5. There's a glue stick and a lunchbox. Describe the height of each object. Circle the object that is taller. Describe the weight of each object. Draw an X on the object that weighs more. So right now, for number 5, what is going to be taller, a glue stick or a lunchbox? Lunchbox is taller. Now, which one is going to weigh more? Well, we know we've used glue sticks all the time in class, and they are very small and very light. So I would say that the lunchbox is going to be heavier, especially if there's food in it. So you're going to do that on the On My Own page for all the On My Own questions. And then the very last thing we're going to do is the problem solving on the back. So the problem solving on the back says, let's see. Look at the box of bandages, like Band-Aids. Describe the objects in the row. Circle the object that is longer and weighs more than the box of bandages. So here we have on this side of the line, so over here on this side of the line, you have one thing, the bandage box. Now you're comparing the cereal box and the eraser to the bandage box. And whichever one is longer than the Band-Aids and weighs more than the Band-Aids, okay, you're going to circle the one that is longer and weighs more. So I would say that this little teeny tiny eraser, if you put it over here, would not be as long as the Band-Aids. So I would say that the cereal box is longer and weighs more than the Band-Aids. Okay? So that is what you are going to do for the problems on the problem solving page. All right? And then that's the last thing you do for the first lesson for math today. And then we'll have our next lesson after this.